Hi, I'm John Green, and this is Crash Course U.S. History, and today we're going to be talking about marriage. That's right, I said it. Getting to know one person for life. Sounds disgusting, but it was common back then. There was one exception, the Mormons, who committed to more than one wife in order to reach their...
Mr. Green, does this mean the Mormons have lots of kids? Why did they practice polygamy in the first place?
Celestial ending, which answers your question, me from the past. Other than having a lot of kids, they also had a lot of scoodly pooping. Unlike the Mormons, the Shakers kept men and women strictly separate, forbidding marriage and scoodly pooping relations. The Shakers were one of the first early religious communal communities, but they were not the first ones. The idea of withdrawing from conventional society to create an ideal community was not a new idea, and in America's Second Great Awakening, many communities grew and reflected the diversity of the reform ideas. Many reformers and idealists wanted to renew the Puritan vision of no slavery, war, alcohol, and discrimination. Women were prominent in the Reform Crusades, especially in their own struggle for suffrage. Activist Christianity resulted from people's desire to reaffirm tradition as they sank deeper into a world of a market economy. Imprisonment for debt continued to increase, and the poorer classes were hit hard. Prisoners were also part of this reform. Criminal laws were being softened, and the number of capital offenses was being reduced. Even with all of these movements, those who suffered from insanity were still treated cruelly. Probably the most well-known activist against the brutal treatments was New England Dorothea Dix, a frail but compassionate woman. Her petition of 1843 to the Massachusetts legislature, vividly describing the poor conditions of the cells, resulted in improved conditions. Widespread drinking was also a way of life. People accustomed to hard physical labor often drank when working. This decreased the efficiency of labor, and poorly operated machinery increased the danger of accidents at work. The temperance movement began to solve this growing problem. Early enemies of the demon drink adopted these policies. The first was to strengthen an individual's will, thus stressing temperance. When people took the pledge to stop drinking, they joined what was called the Cold Water Army. After witnessing the effects of alcohol, Neil Dow of Maine, an employer of labor, sponsored the second policy, the Maine Law of 1851, which prohibited the manufacture and sale of intoxicating liquor.
Had to put my old cow Bessie down today.
I thought your wife's name was Ruth. All you sinners are going straight to hell! The demon drink damns you! Repent! Repent, you Satan worshippers!
She needs a drink.
As Alexis de Tocqueville said, no country in the world where the Christian religion retains a greater influence over the soul of men than in America. This awakening was spread to the masses on the frontier Eastern missionaries. Charles Finney was the greatest of the revival preachers. He became an evangelist and devised the anxious bench, where repenting sinners would sit in front of the congregation. Peter Cartwright, another preacher but a Methodist, was an ill-educated but powerful orator who converted thousands. A key feature of the Second Great Awakening was the feminization of religion. Middle-class women were the most avid enthusiasts, and they were seen as the saviors of society by bringing their family back to God. Revivals also furthered the fragmentation of religious faiths. Named after William Miller, Millerites believed that Christ would return to earth on October 22, 1844. Of course, Jesus failed to descend, but that didn't destroy the movement.
Pray for salvation, the world is ending. Beware of October 22nd, 1844.
The world already has.
Like the first, the Second Awakening tended to widen the lines between classes and regions. The most prosperous and conservative denominations were in the East. Presbyterians and Unitarians were mostly from the wealthier levels of society, while Methodists and Baptists, spread by evangelistic zeal, tended to come from the rural and less prosperous South and West. Alright, let's go to the thought bubble. As mentioned earlier, Mormons were reputed to have several wives. Polygamy and other events like voting as a unit and creating a militia caused other hostility between them and others. Joseph Smith, the founder of this new religion, was murdered in Illinois, and the movement was close to collapsing until Brigham Young, who eventually led his oppressed followers. While overcoming pioneer hardships, the Mormons made the desert a prosperous, cooperative commonwealth and frontier. Pretty soon, more settlers arrived. And a crisis developed when the government couldn't control Young, who had been made governor. Fortunately, the federal army that harassed the Mormons was sent back after the territory established anti-polygamy laws. Thanks, Thought Bubble.
Might I introduce you to the Book of Mormon?
Okay, what's that?
Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Smith. This is my wife, Mrs. Smith.
Hi.
My wife, Mrs. Smith.
How you doing?
And my wife, Mrs. Smith.
Hey. Yeah, okay. Not only were women in this period important in the revival of reforms, they were also the first advocates for women's rights. American women had more advantages than European women, and they continued to increase their chances of equality. Gender differences were strongly emphasized, largely because of the market economy, which separated women and men into different economic roles. Some women increasingly felt that their homes, the centerpiece of their life, were cages, and female reformers began to gather. Words said by disapproving men could not stop noticeable feminists from strengthening their crusade.
Back up.
All right. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Angered when her delegation in the London Anti-Slavery Convention was ignored, prominent figure Lucretia Mott involved herself in the women's rights movement. Quaker Susan B. Anthony, a militant lecturer, exposed herself to vulgar words and acts. In 1848, unflinching feminists met at New York in a memorable women's rights convention. Elizabeth Stanton read a declaration of sentiments declaring that all men and women are created equal. As Elizabeth Stanton once said, "Come, come, my conservative friend. Wipe the dew off your spectacles and see that the world is moving." Oh, it's time for the open letter. Alright. Aspen said she'd shoot me if I didn't get this one right, so let's get this over with. Alright. It's time for the mystery document. Let's see what we got here. A rapidly developing industrialization made possible by a technology forged of steam and iron was changing the face of what had formerly been a self-consciously agrarian nation. While the bulk of the population remained on the land, by the 1840s there was a demonstrable centripetal movement toward the town, the city, and the factory. While the mystery document seems to imitate the experimental socialist communities and increasingly organized public activism, it can only be the Blithedale Romance by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Hey Stan, did I get it right? Stan, what are you doing? I knew it. I did.